one of the first questions I always ask is, where did this crisis originate and where did it go to? The crisis of 2007-2008 originated in American property markets. Not even all of the property markets of the United States. It actually originated mainly in the American Southwest, in California, Arizona, Nevada, and also in Florida and Georgia. The crisis had a certain character, which was about foreclosures of housing that could not be paid for. The foreclosure crisis actually originates in 2003, and there were many signs of it after 2003, but those signs were confined to African American and Hispanic immigrant communities. And as usually happens in the United States, if people like that have a crisis, nobody takes much notice. It's only when the crisis went to the middle class, white populations, that people started to notice something was very badly wrong. And that happened in 2007. And it was quite simple that many people had taken on debt to purchase a house, and they could not afford to pay off that debt, and therefore there was a foreclosure. But the United States financial industry had come up with the construction of a secondary mortgage market in which all of those mortgages were bundled into new collateralized debt obligations and then were sold to the rest of the world as very good investment vehicles. So what the crash did was not only to hit the housing market, but it also destroyed the value of those investment vehicles and destroyed the value of all of those people who had invested in those investment vehicles, so that it spread from the United States very quickly through the financial institutions to other financial institutions in Europe. In fact, the first sign of difficulty in the global financial system was Paribas, a French bank, which had invested a great deal of its money in these collateralized debt obligations. But then it spread all over the place, and pretty soon the credit markets of the world froze up. So this crisis then had something to do with urbanization. And it immediately leads into the question, what has the role of urbanization been in macroeconomic disruptions? And if you look back at what happened in 1997-98 in Southeast Asia, you find a very strong component of the property market in the middle of that crisis. If you go back to 1973, there was a crash in the property markets of the United States, Britain, Australia, New Zealand. It wasn't a global crash, but it was a very big impact. And so the depression of the 1970s had a lot to do with troubles in the property markets. And when people went back and looked even further, just recently, people found a very important connection between the property market expansion in the 1920s in the United States and the property market crash of 1928, which preceded the stock market crash by 1 year. And it's now recognized that actually leading into the Great Depression was a strong property component. But what is interesting about this history is that very few people have looked at it systematically. In fact, the problem of the 1920s was only uncovered very recently when some researchers at the National Bureau of Economic Research decided to take a look at the property systems in the light of what happened in 2007, 2008. And the conclusion they drew from this was that if policymakers had been aware of what had happened in the 1920s, they would never have permitted the property boom of the 2000s to take off in the United States in the way it did, because almost certainly it was going to produce a crash, with the real possibility that it would not simply be a crash in property markets, but it would spread to the economy in general. So this story is, I think, important because it suggests that crises in the capitalist economy are frequently centered on property markets. Not always, but frequently. And this goes back to a commentary by Marx, who talks about the way in which the circulation of fixed capital, and he doesn't say this in this quote, but elsewhere you can put this together, but the circulation of fixed capital through the built environment is in fact one of the ways in which capital overextends itself and gets to a point of overaccumulation, overproduction, and therefore generates a crisis. So Marx in Capital has, if you like, a theoretical foundation for concentrating our attention very much on the circulation of fixed capital in the built environment and the circulation of finance capital through the consumption fund in the built environment. And this is one of the theses that I've been spending some time unraveling. But there is something else, however, about this. If you look at the responses to 2007, 2008, the crisis spread through the financial system to all of those institutions that had invested in what was bad investments in the collateralized debt obligations. And as a result of that, the difficulties could be understood geographically in many different parts of the world. But one of the parts of the world that had not invested anything in all of that and remained unaffected by the financial side of the crisis was China. China, from the 1970s onwards and through 1990s, had insulated itself from the kinds of financial push that had created the crash in Southeast Asia and Korea in 1997-98. So China wasn't caught up in this. But what China did feel very badly was a sudden drop in consumer demand from the United States. Because the housing market had interestingly been a way of actually supplementing people's incomes. People in 2000 who had a house worth $200,000 suddenly found their house was worth $300,000. They would refinance and take the extra $100,000 and spend it. So actually, aggregate demand in the United States from 2000 onwards was very much based on people taking money out of their housing wealth and spending it. Now, subsequently, it was said they were profligate, and they were going off and buying yachts and going to the Bahamas for vacations. Well, some of them did. But most of them took that money out because they needed it desperately to pay for the tuition of their children to go to universities, which in the United States cost you $50,000 or $60,000 a year, or they used it for healthcare costs, which were very, very high. So people remortgaged and refinanced their mortgage in order to pay off their debts in these areas. And when the housing market suddenly turned down, they had a house which they'd remortgaged for $400,000, which was only now worth $300,000. They were what we call underwater. Their mortgage was worth more than the actual sale value of their house. And then many of them at that point could not consume anymore. So the American consumer market went crashing in 2007, 2008. And as the consumer market crashed, so all of the countries that relied upon that consumer market found themselves in immense difficulty. China, of course, provides a great deal of the consumer goods to the United States. The United States is China's major market. In 2008, suddenly China could not sell its goods in the United States because the demand in the United States had disappeared. China actually suddenly found all of its export industries in deep distress. There was some suggestion that by the beginning of 2009, China had lost 30 million jobs in manufacturing as a response to the collapse of the American consumer market. 30 million jobs. That is huge. Now, I don't know if that's exactly the right number. It may have been 25 million, it may have been 40 million, I don't know. But it was a huge, huge hit upon the labor market in China. And one of the things we know about the Chinese government is it is extremely, extremely nervous about labor unrest and potential labor uprisings. All of Chinese economic policy has been built around a policy of labor absorption. You absorb as much labor as you can into the workforce, which means you have to permanently create new job opportunities. And suddenly they find themselves with 30 million people unemployed because of the export market crash. What are they going to do? Well, the Chinese did something actually very similar to what the United States had earlier done. It decided to urbanize. It went into a massive, massive urbanization process. And since 2007, 2008, 25% of the growth in China has been accounted for by housing production and consumption alone, just housing. When you add all of the infrastructures, roads, railways, water supply networks, shopping malls, and all the rest of it, you end up with about half of China's growth since 2007-8 has been actually around urbanization. They have built whole new cities, particularly away from the coast, inland. Whole new cities where nobody yet lives. They have about 6 or 7, maybe more, cities which are empty cities, which they've just built. It was a vast absorption of labor. And there was a study done by the International Monetary Fund and the World Labour Organization in 2009, which suggested that by the end of 2009, the net loss of jobs in China due to the collapse of the export market was only 3 million, which means that the Chinese created 27 million jobs in about 9 months. How did they do that? The central government essentially turned to the banks and said, lend. Lend to every developer you can find. And then it said to the banks, lend to every municipality you can find, and tell the municipality, and then it told the municipalities, invest, develop, build as much as you can, absorb as much labor as you can. So you get this fantastic investment in the built environment, and China's growth, which went down in 2009, suddenly surges up again to above 10%, and it's remained very high ever since, but it's now down to 5 or 6%. Other countries did something similar. Turkey did exactly the same. In 2001, Turkey had had a major crisis, huge crisis. and it needed to get out of it. So what did it do? At that point, a new government comes into power, and it decides, urbanize, rebuild Istanbul, turn Istanbul into a global city. Meanwhile, surplus funds during this whole period are going into the Gulf region. And you see these spectacular forms of urbanization in Dubai. So what you're seeing is capital surpluses being absorbed through urbanization, and in the Chinese case, labor surpluses being absorbed through urbanization. And the consequences for the global economy have been huge. Any country which was supplying raw materials to China during this period came out of the crisis of 2007, 2008 very quickly. Chile is a good example. Why? Because Chile has copper. What do the Chinese need to build? Copper. Australia came out very fast. What does Australia have? Minerals, coal, steel, iron ore. So any countries connected to China came out very fast. So you have two worlds. You have one world which is collapsing, North America, Europe, and the like, and one world which is surging forward on the basis of urbanization and radical, rapid urbanization. And here in Latin America, you can see both of those things at work. Latin America reorients its trade to China. And you're supplying raw materials to China, soybeans, etc. Latin America becomes, in effect, almost one vast soybean plantation for the China trade. And this has tremendous impacts in Argentina, Brazil. And at the same time, surplus funds start flowing into building like crazy in many cities throughout, not only Turkey, but in emerging economies. Russia also being caught up in this. So the answer to the crisis of 2007 and 2008 that began in property markets was found by investing in property markets in another part of the world. Because China consumed, since 2007, 2008, more than half of the world's cement supplies. It's produced and consumed more than half of the world's steel. It's produced and consumed a huge amount of raw materials, so that for a brief period, raw material producers started to do very well in the world market because of the China trade and because of the Chinese move into urbanization on a massive scale. Now this actually parallels something which I've long argued about, but which most economists don't like to recognize. That the answer to the Great Depression of the 1930s was initially the Second World War, but then after the Second World War, the big question arose, how is that surplus productive capacity that had been developed particularly in the United States going to be put to good use so that the United States did not fall back into the depression conditions of the 1930s? And this was a very serious problem because, again, there was going to be a labor absorption problem as people came back from fighting in the Second World War, people who knew how to shoot, people who'd fought for freedom, people who'd fought for something of a better life. And if they came back to the United States and found themselves back in depression, everybody in power in the United States recognized this was a very dangerous situation. Furthermore, the United States had been in alliance with the Soviet Union in World War II. So it had been in alliance with what is customarily referred to by the ruling bourgeoisie in the United States as the devil. They'd been in bed with the devil for 5 years. How are they going to get out? Well, there were a number of things that happened. Firstly, there was the crusade against the anti-communist crusade, the construction of the Cold War, all of that, and the attack upon anybody who had left thinking, all the Marxists, communists, the McCarthyism, the pogroms, the cleansing of all of the political apparatus of anybody on the left. That was part of the thing. But the other thing was, they realized they had to create full employment. How were they going to create full employment? All the legislation after 1945 to create full employment was centered on one solution: suburbanization. Build the suburbs. Build the highways. Then everybody would have to have a car. Detroit would flourish. Build the suburbs. But you then had to provide the finance so that people could afford the suburbs. So you started to pay better wages so that people could afford to live in the suburbs. And it wasn't only the suburbs, it was also the development of the American West. California was kind of a smallish place in 1945. The American South was still undeveloped. So what you did was you had almost exactly what the Chinese have now done. That is, large parts of the country that were underdeveloped. Okay, we have a development project in the American South and West. In the same way the Chinese are now having a development project in the interior. And at the same time, you're also suburbanizing in the already existing regions. And this absorbed vast amounts of capital, vast amounts of labor, and it also contained a very, very important element. That is, you started to offer home ownership, the American dream as it came to be called, to large segments of the American working class. Because it was said in some of the legislation that was written in the 1930s, homeowners don't go on strike. Homeowners don't create political trouble. Homeowners are stable members of the community. They are not anti-capitalist, they are pro-capitalist. And we can say to all of them who've become proud homeowners, those communists or socialists will take your houses away from you. So it had a political angle, and it was very successful. Can you imagine a revolutionary movement coming out of the American suburbs? Of course not. In fact, they're reactionary as hell. And, you know, this is great for the Republican Party. That's where its strength is. So this is what you do. And this is what happened in the United States from 1945 to around the 1970s, when the suburban solution went too far and started to collapse. I don't have time to talk about how the role of that in the crisis of the 1970s, but it was a very significant role. But here is China doing exactly the same thing, though doing in about 5 years what the United States did in 30 or 40 years. And it did it very, very fast. And there was an incredible statistic that came out in the Financial Times not so long ago, which I found astonishing, but the Financial Times tends to be reliable. It's one piece of the capitalist press you can sort of trust to sort of tell the truth to the capitalist class. And it pointed out that actually the data suggested that in the last 5 years, China had poured more cement in those 5 years than the United States had poured in the whole of the preceding century. That is, you're covering the world with concrete, and you think about that as a solution to the economic problem, but what is it doing to the environmental problem? And of course, automobiles in China suddenly take off. The car market takes off. I mean, you see the pictures of China 30 years ago and everybody on bicycles. You're dead if you're on a bicycle anymore because you got hit over by cars. So this is this is a transformation, which is huge. Now, there have been many people, including me over the last 3 years, saying this cannot continue in China. There's going to be a crash, almost certainly. But it hasn't happened yet. It's begun, you know, the Shanghai property market doubles in value in 1 year and then retrenches by 30% and then doubles again because the Chinese government is manipulating interest rates in such a way to keep the boom going. And it is astonishing overproduction. And everybody recognizes also that there's overcapacity in steel production, overcapacity in car production, overcapacity in all of these areas. But the Chinese, at this point, are using central government power to actually prolong this urbanization boom because they know if it stops, then they are in deep difficulty. There are other parts of the world where you see similar processes. I've been spending some time over the last 4 or 5 years in Turkey. Turkey has been the second fastest growing economy in the world since around 2007. Closely follows China. It's doing the same thing as China. Vast infrastructure projects, another bridge over the Bosphorus, new airport, release the land on the old airport which is close to the center of the city. In other words, it's a property development. And there are certain jurisdictions that are actually survive on the basis of this. Both Hong Kong and Singapore, for example, are in effect states which are property development states. And their economies are all about that internally. The effective demand is managed through that. So what we see then is this connectivity between urbanization processes on the one hand and macroeconomic transformations on the other. And I would argue that the only way in which global capital has managed to be stabilized over the last 6 or 7 years has been through the urbanization process, which has been launched in China primarily, but also in certain other parts of the world, particularly in emerging market countries and other countries like Turkey. Now, one of the consequences of this, however, is that what kind of urbanization is involved here? And what is then becoming apparent is that increasingly what we're seeing is that actually what we're doing is we're building cities for people to invest in, not necessarily for people to live in. That the very rich people need some place to hide, protect their money. So in New York, somebody builds a high-rise condominium, very expensive, and very rich people buy it, not to live in. Maybe they come a week a year to go shopping. Not to live in, but to invest in. And actually, what you're seeing, even in places like Turkey, is exactly the same process. There are lots and lots of empty apartments, lots and lots of empty dwellings in a country where there's a crisis of affordable housing for the mass of the population. And we have the same situation in New York. One of my favorite games is to go around New York after sundown and see how many lights are on in those big buildings. And you see they're totally dark. Maybe 3 lights. And you kind of say, nobody's living there. And yet there's a shortage of affordable housing for the massive population in New York that cannot find any place to live at a decent, livable rent. Half of the population of New York City tries to live on less than $30,000 a year. $30,000 a year would mean if you want a 2-bedroom apartment for your kids and all of that, then you should be paying no more than $1,200 a month rent. There is no place anywhere in New York where you can do that. Most people, to get a 2-bedroom apartment, have to pay at least $3,500, if not $4,000 a month. The same is true in London. The same is true pretty much everywhere I go. Well, this is one of the universals that this process is producing. There are, in some of the cities I've been in Turkey, large areas of completely empty dwellings in the midst of a crisis of affordable housing for an impoverished population. And building for a place for people to invest in also involves other things. For instance, big capital, finance, developers, they like big projects. They don't like messing around with, affordable housing, it's not very profitable. So they get into alliance with the state and they love mega projects. So you go around the world and almost every city you're in, you find there are a whole series of mega projects, which big capital loves to fund, which are very expensive, draw down on public resources, take up valuable land, usually for some spectacular kind of piece of architecture. So a signature architect is brought in to build a museum or something of that kind. So you kind of go, these mega projects are becoming real problems. And as you look at this, you suddenly see that this investment that's going on in cities for people to invest in, that this process is actually forcing out large segments of the population from the locations in which they have access to jobs. So we're getting a segregation of the city. I saw a project just 3 weeks ago in Istanbul. A poor area had been redeveloped. The population there had been given good housing, but it was 45 kilometers away from the center of the city. And they had this system, which I think is parallel to what exists in many Latin American countries. You don't get social housing, but if you pay $200 a month or something like that, after 15 years you become an owner. It's social housing, but it's also connected to ownership. But these people are transported way out to the periphery. They have no access to jobs. They can't find that money. They get foreclosed upon, and they drift back into the city as homeless people. So what you find in Istanbul is, of course, more and more of those houses way out there, which are good quality housing, no question, but they're in completely wrong locations. And the Minister of Housing says, we have done a wonderful job giving people housing. And they just don't seem responsible enough to make it work. They're typical poor people. And all you have to say is, but typical poor people need jobs. So they're not typical poor people anymore. Well, that's not my department. That belongs to the Ministry of Labor or Economic Development. It's not my fault. We have done our job, and we did a very good job, and we even got some prizes for our designs. So this is the kind of world which we're constructing. So look very carefully at these processes. They have social implications because the displacements are not easily accomplished. There are social movements, some of them quite vigorous and even violent, resisting the displacements. But there is, at the same time also, a destruction of many of the qualities of urban life that make urban life worthwhile. The destruction of social solidarities, the destruction of mutual support structures, the destruction of access to job opportunities, the destruction of even certain kinds of job opportunities, which are often encompassed by small workshops in rundown circumstances, but which nevertheless provide employment. So that the social consequences of this are absolutely devastating. The environmental consequences, I don't have to dwell upon. It's absolutely astonishingly appalling environmental consequences. So here we have contemporary urbanization, which has all of these implications, but at the same time, you then ask the question, if China had not urbanized in the way it did after 2007 and 2008, what would have happened to global capitalism? If the United States had not suburbanized after 1945, what would have happened to global capitalism? And here it seems to me there is also the fact that the China urbanization process is running into difficulties. And I cannot imagine that it's going to continue and can continue indefinitely. Now, I've made this prediction before and got badly caught out on it because in 2003, I was saying the property market crash is imminent in the United States. My wife said we should buy an apartment in New York City at that time. I said, no, property market crash is coming. 2004, she said, hey, we should buy a place. I said, no, property market crash is coming. 2005, I said, no, the property market crash is coming. 2006, she said, I'm absolutely sick to death of you and your property market crash. We're going to buy a place. So we did, and the year after, the property market crashed. So don't trust me on which year China is going to have a property market crash. But do trust me that it is going to have one somewhere down the line. Thank you very much.
Bom, está aberto para as perguntas, né, encaminhadas por escrito. A gente tenho aqui uma pergunta já que eu já vou colocar. A gente tem um limite, infelizmente, bom, sempre a gente tem um limite, mas o nosso limite hoje o professor Harvey precisa sair ao meio-dia, né, então tudo que a gente tem de tempo para debate, eventualmente autógrafos, precisa acontecer nessa hora que a gente tem disponível. Então, pedir para quem quiser encaminhar, assim que o mais rápido possível, as questões. Eu vou ler as que estão aqui na mesa e passar em seguida a palavra para o professor David Harvey. A primeira questão é como o desenvolvimento do capital financeiro provoca mudanças na exploração da força de trabalho. A segunda é como Henri Lefebvre ressalta a importância da construção civil na acumulação de capital devido à sua baixa composição orgânica. capacidade orgânica. Composição. Diante das transformações técnicas na construção civil, quais seus impactos sobre a acumulação de capital? Ou seja, quais os impactos das mudanças que vêm acontecendo na construção civil na acumulação de capital? E a terceira e última, antes para a gente terminar esse bloco, em diversos países se observam manifestações e protestos contra o projeto social imposto pelo neoliberalismo. Ainda assim, eles se mostram fragmentados e heterogêneos. Como dar unidade a esses movimentos de contestação em torno de um projeto de classes? Qual o papel dos partidos políticos?
Lot of complicated questions. You know, the whole question of the role of finance capital in this is, I think, very significant. But I'd also like to point out that we're not only dealing with finance capital, but we're also having to deal with merchant capital. Some of the power structure in many countries, and this varies from country to country, the balance of power between finance, merchant capital, and the direct producers is, of course, shifting and has shifted through the neoliberal period.
A questão do capital financeiro é preciso ser considerada assim, mas também é preciso considerar o capital mercantil. E o equilíbrio entre esses dois mercados é preciso ver que eles são, que é um equilíbrio que em permanente mudança.
In the United States, of course, one of the biggest merchant capitalists is Walmart. And if you look at Walmart's relationship with producers, its producers are essentially in China.
Por exemplo, temos como exemplo de capital mercantil o Walmart, que é um poder imenso. E, no entanto, ele depende muito da produção da China.
Walmart can exercise tremendous power over its suppliers, so that the suppliers have a very low rate of profit, even though they have a very high rate of labor exploitation.
E esse exemplo, o Walmart, ele tem um grande poder sobre os seus fornecedores, quer dizer, ele que dita os preços. Mas, no entanto, tem também algumas vulnerabilidades.
This means that value and surplus value produced in China is realized in the United States by Walmart.
A mais-valia que se produz na China, na realidade, é absorvida pelos Estados Unidos através do Walmart.
In the case of Apple computers, we know that Foxconn, that produces the computers in China, has a rate of profit of 3%, whereas Apple, that sells them in the United States, has a profit rate of around 27%.
O caso da Apple Computers, na China, o lucro que eles têm é de em torno de 27% apenas.
Now this
são produzidos na China.
Yes. This transfer of value means that the relationship between production of capital and realization of capital are geographically separated.
Isso quer dizer que a relação entre a produção do capital e a produção e o capital são separados geograficamente.
And a lot of the politics of realization of value are centered, of course, in urban life.
E isso está centralizado, os políticos percebem que isso está centralizado na vida urbana.
Now, the question that Marx asked about merchant capital was, why do capitalists need merchants?
A questão que Marx se perguntava é, em relação ao capital de mercado, é por que os capitalistas precisam dos comerciantes.
And he showed why they were necessary.
E mostrou a necessidade dessa relação para o capitalismo.
But what he did not do was to discuss how the merchants might accumulate their own form of power and actually extract far more from the system than they legitimately should.
O que ele não trouxe à tona é como que os próprios comerciantes podem realizar o seu próprio poder dentro do capitalismo.
The same thing applies to renters, to the landlord class, and it also applies to the financiers.
O mesmo se aplica em relação aos proprietários de imóveis e também os que trabalham no mercado financeiro.
So we have structures of exploitation in the workplace, accompanied by structures of exploitation in the living place.
Há estruturas então de exploração não só no mercado, não só no ambiente de trabalho, como também no ambiente habitacional.
What happened in the United States after 1945 was corporations paid workers more.
O que aconteceu nos Estados Unidos depois de 1945 é que as corporações pagavam mais aos seus trabalhadores.
But then the capitalist class took it back by raising housing prices, consumer goods and the like.
Mas o capitalismo em si, os donos do capital, recobraram esses salários, vamos dizer, recuperaram para si esses salários no momento em que aumentaram preços de habitação, preços de produtos de consumidor.
So if you look at structures of exploitation of consumers organized by credit card companies, telephone companies, landlords, property owners and the like, you see a whole arena of extraction of value from the consumption end of the circulation process.
E pode-se ver essa volta aos donos do capital, do dinheiro em si, nas estruturas que são estabelecidas, por exemplo, o cartão de crédito, conta de telefone, os preços das propriedades de imóveis, etc.
Now, Marx did not look at this because in his time consumerism was relatively a small question.
E Marx não teve esse insight porque, na sua época, o consumo em si não era um fator tão importante como é agora.
But in the United States, 70% of the economy is driven by consumerism, which means roughly that about 70% of the exploitation is occurring in consumer end of things rather than the production end of things.
O consumo em si nos Estados Unidos corresponde a 70% da atividade toda. E então, logicamente, é aí também que ocorre a maior parte da exploração do capital.
This explains one of the fights I've had with my fellow Marxists who insist that production is everything and consumerism is secondary.
Muitas vezes há discussões também com os meus colegas marxistas, e o centro da discussão é esse, né? Coloca-se muito ênfase no ambiente marxista de que a produção é tudo, e, no entanto, como se o consumo fosse uma coisa periférica.
But I keep saying, okay, the workers get higher wages, but then they're faced with higher housing costs.
E a gente fala uma coisa, por exemplo, sim, dentro do capitalismo, os trabalhadores têm aumentos nos salários, mas, no entanto, eles gastam muito mais nas propriedades e nos objetos que eles consomem.
In aggregate, they're no better off. In fact, they may be worse off because the housing costs are even higher.
E, na realidade, esse balanço pode ser para o lado pior em termos de exploração, porque os preços aumentam muito mais.
There is a calculation that says the people should not be spending more than 30% of their income on housing.
Há um cálculo que diz que as pessoas não devem gastar mais do que 30% da sua renda bruta em habitação.
More than half of the population of New York is spending more than 50% of its income on housing.
Mas mais de 50% da população de Nova York gasta mais de 50% da sua renda em habitação.
And the way things are going, it'll soon be 60 or 70% because rents are rising rapidly.
Mas os aluguéis e compra de imóveis estão subindo muito e daqui a pouco vai virar 60%, 70% da renda de cada um.
Now, these are the sorts of things that political parties should be addressing very strongly and very directly.
São essas coisas que os partidos políticos poderiam perfeitamente se dedicar, né, em termos da sua plataforma.
But I don't see them effectively doing it.
Mas a gente não vê que eles estejam fazendo uma coisa dessas que é tão importante.
And what this then leads into is a question of what kind of politics can be constructed around urbanization.
Então, levanta-se a pergunta, né? Que tipo de política realmente pode ser proposta quando a gente vê essa realidade das relações de urbanização?
And again, frequently on the left, politics is thought to be about the workplace, not about the living place.
E na esquerda, na política esquerdista, de esquerda, a gente vê muito mais foco na questão da produção e não nesse assunto da urbanização.
But actually, if you look at protest movements over the last 15 or 20 years, most of the big protest movements have been over the qualities, or actually the bad qualities, of urban life. Urban life.
Assim, e a gente vê nos protestos dos últimos 15, 20 anos, a gente vê protestos realmente e manifestações em relação à qualidade da vida urbana.
Which says that everyday life in the city should be one of the focuses of our politics.
E disse que a vida urbana, a qualidade da vida urbana nas cidades, enfim, deveria ser o foco da política.
And to me, this is a very important reorientation of left thinking.
E isso que está acontecendo é uma reorientação, na realidade, do pensamento de esquerda.
Which is not caught up with the fact that the big protest in Turkey around Gezi Park and also the 2013 protests in this country were more urban-based than they were work-based.
E a gente pode ver reflexo disso, que nos protestos que houveram na Turquia e aqui no Brasil em 2013, estavam centrados, aconteceram, né, na região urbana.
And if that's where the protests are, then that's where our thinking should be.
E se os protestos acontecem lá, é porque acontecem lá, né? É lá que está acontecendo o problema.
And our organizing should be.
E é assim que deve ser feita a organização dessas manifestações.
So this is, if you like, one of the reasons I would support movements like the Right to the City movement.
Então é por isso que eu apoio movimentos como, por exemplo, o movimento de direito à cidade.
And on the other hand, we know that those movements of this sort can easily be co-opted in a neoliberal direction.
E também sabemos que esses tipos de movimentos, por exemplo, o movimento de direito à cidade, pode ser cooptado, quer dizer, desviado para os interesses neoliberalistas.
Now, I know what I've done with these questions. I've actually answered a few other questions which I wanted to talk about anyway.
Eu peço desculpas porque respondi a sua pergunta, mas na realidade também respondi a várias outras perguntas que eu já queria falar de qualquer jeito.
Sorry about that.
Bom, como vocês veem, nós recebemos aqui bastante perguntas, o que obriga a fazer um trabalho de tentar fazer uma síntese. O primeiro bloco eu fiz uma síntese em três questões. A primeira envolve algumas perguntas sobre se a urbanização, se não for pela urbanização, como o capitalismo pode lidar com as suas crises no futuro. O segundo grupo de questões é sobre as consequências para o meio ambiente dessa solução, entre aspas, da urbanização. Como você vê as possibilidades de mudar isso? E uma pergunta específica, nesse sentido, é como conciliar essa preocupação que você manifesta com os problemas ambientais com a proposta que teria feito de um novo New Deal no livro O Novo Imperialismo. O terceiro grupo de questões, posso? Just one more, or you prefer to answer?
Three questions. Do you remember them? A segunda foi o quê? The first one was about urbanization regarding nature.
Let me answer.
Vai responder.
One of the the last book I wrote on 17 contradictions and the end of capitalism.
O último livro que eu escrevi,
Uh,
17 17 contradições do capitalismo.
At the end, I talked about dangerous contradictions.
No final eu falei sobre contradições perigosas.
And one of the dangerous contradictions is that capital has to grow in order to survive.
E uma das perigosas contradições é que o capital tem que crescer para poder sobreviver.
And it grows at a compound rate.
E cresce de maneira exponencial.
And result is that historically we see capital growing at around 2.5% compound like that.
E a gente vê que historicamente o capitalismo cresce a 2,5%.
I think we've reached a point where compound growth cannot continue.
E nós vemos que esse crescimento exponencial já não pode continuar a ser assim.
And I think what has happened in urbanization is a good example of why.
E a gente vê na urbanização um bom exemplo de por que isso não pode continuar com esse crescimento exponencial.
In the 1970s, I visited Recife, Salvador, various other cities like that.
Nos anos 70, eu visitei cidades como Recife, Salvador e outras cidades desse tipo.
A couple of years ago, I went to those cities again, and they were completely unrecognizable.
E há poucos anos atrás voltei a essas cidades e eles estão completamente irreconhecíveis.
High-rise buildings, highways,
arranha-céus,
shopping malls.
shoppings.
Actually, everybody likes to say things are special here, but it's funny. I see those things in China.
Parece que é uma coisa especial do Brasil, né? Mas a mesma coisa está acontecendo na China.
I see them in the United States.
Nos Estados Unidos também.
I see them in Turkey.
Turquia.
Stop telling me there's something special about Brazil.
Parem de falar que o Brasil está acontecendo coisa especial.
You're capitalist, for Christ's sake.
Vocês são capitalistas, pombas.
And actually, but when you look at that, what's happened in 40 years,
Mas quando vocês olham para trás e vê o que aconteceu nos últimos 40 anos,
that is, can you imagine another 40 years of doubling of that?
será que é possível imaginar mais 40 anos dessa duplicação permanente?
What kind of urban landscape will we be living in?
Que tipo de paisagem urbana será que a gente vai ter?
When the Chinese, with all their concrete mixers, starting pouring cement all over you.
Com os chineses jogando cimento em cima de vocês agora.
I mean, this is a crazy, insane world.
É um mundo insano.
Particularly when you think we're building buildings to invest in, not to live in.
E particularmente quando a gente pensa que a gente está construindo coisas que não são para morar, são para investir.
And you look at the urbanization pictures from Dubai and say, here's a region which is crying out for proper development. And what do? They build a huge hotel with a ski slope inside of it in the middle of the desert.
E o que eles fazem lá em Dubai, por exemplo? Uma região tipicamente onde há necessidade de moradia veemente. E o que eles estão fazendo? Construindo hotéis de 45 andares com pista de esqui lá dentro, no meio do deserto.
We should all take a big banner to the top of that building and say, this is insane.
A gente devia levar uma bandeira, colocar hasteada no topo desse prédio, por exemplo, e dizer, isso aqui é totalmente maluco.
And do the same with all these mega projects and upscale condominiums in New York City.
E fazer a mesma coisa com condomínios caros em Nova York, por exemplo.
And when you say this, the conventional public looks at it and says, I am insane.
E o público deveria dizer, puxa, eu é que estou doido, então.
And I have to say, I've never been saner in my life.
E eu nunca estive tão são quanto estou agora na minha vida.
And we're living in this insanity.
O que eu vejo é a insanidade. E me chamam de insano, eu.
And I'm anti-capitalist for rational reasons, not irrational reasons.
Eu sou anticapitalista por razões racionais, não irracionais.
It's the capitalists who are totally irrational.
É o capitalismo que é totalmente irracional.
And this particularly applies to the environmental problem.
E isso se aplica particularmente ao assunto ambiental.
Actually, capitalists love the environmental problem because it is big business.
Os capitalistas, na realidade, adoram o problema ambiental, porque, na realidade, significa novos negócios.
You can solve the electricity problem by actually building huge dams, and you have renewable energy.
Vocês pode-se construir enormes represas para se ter energia renovável, né, por exemplo.
And we know what the environmental consequences are of these big dam projects in Latin America.
E a gente sabe quais são as consequências desses grandes empreendimentos hidrelétricos em relação ao meio ambiente na América do Sul.
So I think that, again, the environmental question comes up against the urbanization question.
Então a gente vê que a questão ambiental se bate frontalmente com a questão de urbanização.
And I keep on arguing with my colleagues that there is no answer to the environmental question without answering the urbanization question.
Não há nenhuma resposta, eu digo sempre aos meus colegas, não há nenhuma resposta em relação ao assunto ambiental se a gente não endereçar a questão também de urbanização.
And it's pretty clear from the air quality in Chinese cities and so on that actually that form of urbanization which we are moving into is environmentally disastrous.
E a gente pode ver, por exemplo, pelas análises de qualidade do ar nas novas cidades chinesas, que essa questão ambiental é fundamentalmente ligada à questão urbana, de urbanização, perdão.
But again, you know, people look at you and kind of say, oh, well, you know, you've kind of got a bourgeois romantic view of him, you know, you love teddy bears or something.
Mas aí eles olham para mim e falam assim, puxa vida, você é mesmo um romântico, né? Você deve adorar aqueles ursinhos de pelúcia, essas coisas.
So I think, you know, these problems are connected. And I think that there's no way you're going to deal with the questions of social inequality in the world. No way you're going to be able to deal with the environmental questions which we're facing in this world without addressing the question of urbanization head on.
E não há outra maneira de lidar com os problemas sociais do mundo e com os problemas ambientais do mundo sem lidar diretamente na cabeça da questão da urbanização.
And if we cut off urbanization as a way to solve the problem of overaccumulation of capital, then actually capital is in serious difficulty.
E se a gente for lidar com a urbanização e eliminar ela como um elemento para a salvação do capital e a sobreacumulação do capital, se eliminarmos, o capital entra num buraco enorme.
So we have to actually then move to the anti-capitalist position and say we have to reconstruct an urbanization that is not integral to capital accumulation, which then actually will threaten the whole structure of capital accumulation.
Então, a gente tem que lidar com esse assunto de urbanização de maneira delicada, vendo uma maneira de lidar com isso de maneira que não se afete de maneira totalmente destrutiva, in a destructive way to...
Yeah.
Yes, na questão estrutural da economia.
So I think that, you know, I'm anti-capitalist for rational reasons.
Eu sou anticapitalista por razões racionais.
And I think anybody who is rational and sane should be anti-capitalist.
E eu acho que qualquer pessoa que tenha o mínimo de racionalidade e sanidade mental deveria ser anticapitalista.
Questão se a saída pela urbanização nos coloca, além da contradição em relação ao meio ambiente, outras em relação ao mundo do trabalho. Uma vez que o trabalho na construção civil é instável e precário. E a pergunta menciona as condições de trabalho análogas à escravidão em Dubai, dos imigrantes latinos nos Estados Unidos e dos haitianos no Brasil. Então, é uma questão ligada às contradições da solução da urbanização para o mundo do trabalho. Um outro grupo de questões diz respeito à sua visão sobre processos de ocupação de edifícios vazios, do tipo squattering, a defesa do uso social da cidade, aos processos de locação social pública, imagino, por oposição ao incentivo à casa própria. Qual a sua posição sobre isso no contexto de cidades que integram o circuito de acumulação do capital? A questão dos limites ao capitalismo voltou em várias questões. Em que medida esses limites podem ser dados pelo meio ambiente, que é algo que já começou a responder, e se há limites ao capital, se podemos ter esperança de que o sistema chegará a seu fim. Tem duas perguntas que dizem respeito à Grécia. O ministro, eu vou ler uma delas, porque é difícil resumir. O ministro das Finanças da Grécia tem falado da necessidade de se ocupar o lugar deixado pelo Global Minotaur dos Estados Unidos, que foi responsável, até 2008, pela reciclagem do excedente global. Por outro lado, tenta lançar um programa de desenvolvimento nacional que aparentemente não passa pela urbanização do meio ambiente construído. Qual a sua opinião sobre a crise na Grécia e de que maneira pode ser central para o capitalismo contemporâneo? E a outra questão nesse sentido se refere às experiências de auditoria da dívida pública na Grécia, na Argentina e na Espanha, se são bons exemplos para o combate ao que você chama de acumulação por despossessão, se você está acompanhando esses processos. Bom, acho que é bastante coisa já. Nós temos 3 questões que vieram em inglês de pessoas da África do Sul, da China e da Turquia, que eu vou passar diretamente depois, se houver tempo, professor, fazer a leitura, ou agora, ou se preferir, depois.
Let me move backwards on this. The Greece question is a political question, not an economic question.
Indo de trás para frente, quer dizer, do mais recente para as perguntas que vieram antes, a questão na Grécia não é uma questão de construção, ou é mais uma questão política, e não de produção.
The Greek economy accounts for 2% of the GDP of the European Union.
A produção na Grécia é de mais ou menos 2% do produto bruto da União Europeia apenas.
You could wipe out its debt overnight with almost no serious economic consequences.
Então, qualquer crise que possa acontecer na Grécia não vai ter consequências enormes ou substanciais.
Again, this is an insane situation because every serious report that has been made about the Greek debt says that there is absolutely no way the Greeks can repay it.
E, novamente, é uma questão realmente insana, porque tudo que se fala sobre a Grécia, sua dívida, se diz que a dívida da Grécia jamais poderá ser paga.
The next line of the report says, but here's how they're going to repay it.
Mas outras linhas de pensamento dizem que aqui tem um jeito de que a Grécia possa pagar sua dívida.
The reason why Greece is so important is because if the debt of the Greeks is forgiven, then what about Spain? What about Italy? What about,
A questão da Grécia, na realidade, é importante, não por ela mesma, mas sim o que se fala, se a dívida grega for perdoada, o que acontece então com a Espanha? Por que não perdoar a dívida da Itália ou enfim, de outros países também?
The same principle applies to the way in which Argentina is being punished over its debt.
O mesmo acontece, por exemplo, com a Argentina. É o mesmo tipo de pensamento, né? Como é que a Argentina está sendo castigada?
And so, like I say, this is an attempt by global bondholders to make absolutely sure that they are going to be fully repaid.
E isso daí, na realidade, é um movimento pelos credores capitalistas de garantir com que a divulgação desse tipo de coisa, né, garantir de que eles sejam realmente pagos.
What's happened with the Greek debt is very interesting. The initial debt was to European banks.
Ou com a Grécia acontece uma coisa interessante. A dívida inicial da dívida grega era com bancos europeus.
I was in favor of Greece defaulting back at the beginning of this whole process.
Eu era a favor, no começo desse processo, de que a Grécia realmente fosse inadimplente.
Then the banks that had lent to the Greeks would have to be bailed out by the German and the French government.
Aí os bancos que emprestaram para os gregos teriam que ser, enfim, suportados, apoiados pelos governos da Alemanha e outros.
So everybody would know that the banks were the source of the problem
E aí todo mundo saberia que a fonte do problema eram os bancos,
by not engaging in responsible lending.
que não se engajaram, que não entraram em empréstimos responsáveis, de fato.
What's happened over the last 6 years has been that the debt of the banks has been absorbed by the European Bank, by the International Monetary Fund, so now the Greeks owe them.
E o que aconteceu é que essa dívida aos bancos europeus foi absorvida por outros bancos, pelo Fundo Monetário Internacional, né, já não é mais a dívida dos bancos.
So the private banks have already been bailed out.
Então os bancos, na realidade, já foram dispensados do problema.
And this is the neoliberal principle, which is that if there is a conflict between the well-being of the banks and the well-being of the people, you shoot the people and
E esse é o princípio do neoliberalismo, né? Se tiver o bem-estar dos bancos e o bem-estar das pessoas, manda matar as pessoas, que é mais fácil.
and this is what has happened.
E é isso que tem acontecido.
So now they're in a situation where they're in a fight with the IMF instead of with the banks.
E agora estão numa situação onde, em vez de brigar com os bancos privados que fizeram esse empréstimo irresponsável, agora eles têm que brigar contra o FMI.
And again, as I said, this is much more difficult.
Claro que o pagamento agora se tornou muito mais difícil de ser feito. O juro é mais alto.
Now this then leads into the question of the end of capitalism, which I like to talk about.
Isso pode levar à questão do fim do capitalismo, que é o que eu queria falar.
Unfortunately, capitalism is not going to end on its own.
Agora, infelizmente, né, o capitalismo, se a gente pensar, como é que ele pode acabar por conta própria?
In other words, there's no point sitting here and waiting for it to collapse.
Ou seja, não tem jeito da gente ficar sentado e esperar ver o capitalismo cair por conta própria.
Because it is not going to do so.
Porque não vai fazer isso.
But what we see is the emergence of a kind of society which capital would require in order to continue.
Nós vemos a emergência de um tipo de sociedade que o capitalismo precisaria para que o capital continuasse.
We see the militarization of control of cities.
Nós vemos a militarização para o controle de cidades.
We see emerging autocratic forms of government.
Nós vemos a emergência de maneiras autocráticas de governo.
We see the total erosion of democratic practices.
Nós vemos a erosão total de práticas democráticas.
We see a ruthless approach to environmental questions.
E nós vemos a brutalidade em relação à maneira como se abordam as questões críticas do meio ambiente.
Because capital doesn't care about eliminating species or destroying habitats.
O capital não está nem aí com a destruição de habitats ou a destruição de espécies.
It would, set up dystopian closed communities
Ele poderia perfeitamente se isolar em pequenas comunidades isoladas.
and let everything else go toxic.
E o resto tudo é tóxico, impossível de sair.
So capital actually can survive very well, but under conditions in which you and I will not survive at all well.
E o capitalismo sobreviveria criando condições onde vocês e eu, por exemplo, não gostaríamos de sobreviver.
And I think it's only when that message gets through loud and clear that people will kind of say, well, we have to end capitalism.
Então, o que deve acontecer é que as pessoas, individuais, mandem um recado muito claro dizendo: nós temos que acabar com o capitalismo.
And the question then arises, how are we going to do that and what are we going to replace it with?
Agora, a questão principal, então, se torna como é que nós vamos fazer isso e com que nós vamos substituir o capitalismo.
Because we're faced with the problem of there are 7 billion, probably soon 8 billion people on planet Earth.
E tentar resolver o problema de 7, 8 bilhões de pessoas, daqui a pouco, no planeta Terra.
And how can we organize our activities in such a way that we all have a decent living chances and a decent living environment?
E como desenvolver as nossas atividades de maneira que a gente possa preservar um modo de vida decente num ambiente decente.
The current institutions don't help us address that question.
As instituições que existem na atualidade não nos ajudam nem um pouco a lidar com essas questões.
Institutions where we should be able to discuss those questions essentially find themselves corralled by neoliberal orthodoxy.
As instituições onde eventualmente a gente poderia ter uma discussão desse tipo são corroídas pelo tipo de pensamento pela atitude neoliberal.
So universities are increasingly dominated by neoliberal orthodoxy and corporatism.
As universidades em si já são cada vez mais dominadas pelo pensamento neoliberalista e pelo corporativismo.
In which we're told freedom of the market is going to give the answer when freedom of the market is in fact the problem.
Onde se diz que a liberdade do mercado, o mercado livre, poderá dar a solução para os problemas que na realidade foram causados pelo próprio mercado livre.
So it is in effect up to us to try to change this world.
Então, é de nossa responsabilidade tentar mudar esse mundo de fato.
And we have to change mental conceptions of the world.
Nós temos que mudar a concepção mental do mundo.
We have to change our social practices.
Mudar as nossas práticas sociais.
Our relation to nature.
Nossa relação com a natureza.
And we have to build alternative institutions.
E construir instituições alternativas.
Now, some of this is happening in various parts of the world.
Isso está acontecendo já em algumas partes do mundo.
And I think that there are all kinds of experiments going on.
Várias partes do mundo, e há muitos experimentos acontecendo hoje em dia.
In which people are trying to find ways to live outside of the commodity nexus, the commodity money nexus.
E a gente vê pessoas então tentando viver fora da esfera do excesso de commodities.
And I think that one of the big questions we have is how can those many initiatives be brought together in a worldwide attempt to construct an alternative.
E a gente pode ver que a construção de uma alternativa poderia vir da unificação dessas várias tendências de maneira a ter uma saída para isto.
But if you ask the question, how much thought is given to this sort of question inside of universities, the answer is not very much.
Agora, se vocês me perguntarem quanto se pensa sobre esses assuntos dentro das universidades, eu diria para vocês que não se pensa muito não dentro das universidades.
And basically the way the universities work is to take people like me and put me in a corner and say, go play in your little corner.
E o que as universidades fazem é pegar pessoas como eu, por exemplo, me dar um canto para eu ficar e diz, vai lá tocar sua música lá naquele cantinho,
I'm sorry,
por favor.
my answer is fuck you, you go. Fuck you.
Ou seja, fodam-se.
Gente, a gente fazer o último conjunto de perguntas e dar um tempinho para o professor ler as que estão ali com ele primeiro. Just ask the last few questions because then it's going to be the last group. E essas vão junto. Bom, Pessoal, o professor leu algumas perguntas que foram enviadas por colegas estrangeiros em inglês. A gente não vai ter tempo de ler, mas ele vai procurar, de alguma maneira, tratar elas. Eu vou ler as últimas aqui. Recentemente, o filósofo húngaro Mészáros adaptou a famosa frase de Rosa Luxemburgo, socialismo ou barbárie, para barbárie se tivermos sorte. Quais são as necessidades e os desafios de uma verdadeira transformação radical da sociedade? Há uma outra pergunta. Eu estou indo devagar aqui para dar tempo de traduzir. A outra pergunta é sobre a ascensão da direita na Europa. A penúltima. Na pós-crise de 2007 e 2008, não houve uma mudança na distribuição de renda, ao contrário do que houve na pós-crise de 29. Como podemos pensar um processo de mudança social que possa transformar a distribuição de renda dentro do cenário atual político, que continua extremamente conservador? A última pergunta é mais específica. Como o senhor vê a construção da ferrovia Atlântico-Pacífico? A construção da ferrovia Atlântico-Pacífico e a questão dos povos indígenas. Terminada, então o professor vai fazer os seus últimos comentários. Claro que é um conjunto enorme de questões, então vai fazer o possível dentro do limite de tempo que a gente tem. Já agradeço imensamente ao professor David Harvey pela disposição toda que teve aqui hoje. Agradeço também a todos pelas inúmeras questões que foram enviadas e peço desculpas se alguma delas ficou mal resumida. Espero que a gente volte a poder tratar dessas questões que foram colocadas aqui hoje. Reitero o convite que nós fizemos para o seminário que vai dar continuidade a essa discussão no segundo semestre, qual vocês receberão o convite em breve.
Yes, right. Yeah, the Chinese have a lot of surplus capital.
Os chineses têm muito capital de superfície.
One of the things I've worked with in my own writing is the idea of a spatial fix to overaccumulating capital.
Uma coisa que eu já falei muito nos meus escritos é sobre a special fix.
Spatial fix.
Spatial. Um acerto espacial para a questão das crises do capitalismo.
That is that countries with surplus capital look for places around the world for investment opportunities.
Ou seja, o espaço como uma oportunidade de investimento para os países capitalistas.
The Chinese have a lot of surplus capital.
Os chineses têm muito capital de superfície.
And over the last 5 years, they've started to look around the world for what to do with it.
Sorry, again?
They've been looking around the world for places to put it.
E os chineses atualmente têm ficado olhando pelo mundo inteiro em lugares onde depositar ou jogar esse capital.
They've been the leading source of what we call a land grab politics, particularly in Africa.
E têm sido também os principais líderes em relação à política de agarrar terra pelo mundo todo.
And also, of course, they're looking for mega projects to invest in.
Estão procurando por mega projetos para poder investir neles.
They've been investing heavily in hydroelectric power in Ecuador and also in oil extraction and refinery in Ecuador.
Estão investindo pesado no Equador, no país do Equador, em hidroelétricas e exploração do petróleo.
They have various, in my view, crazy ideas about trans-American transport links.
E e eles têm ideias que, no meu ponto de vista, são completamente malucas, por exemplo, de fazer meios de transporte para atravessar a América do Sul.
Through Ecuador, down the Amazon to Manaus, and then this other huge project which has been mentioned here.
Passando pelo Equador e atravessando a Amazônia, passando por Manaus, e projetos como que foi mencionado aqui, Ferrovia Atlântico-Pacífico.
Again, the big question to me is this just simply a way of absorbing surplus capital, or is it involved in something which is truly needed?
E a minha pergunta é sempre essa, né? Será que, ou minha proposta de que se pergunte será que isso daqui é simplesmente um investimento de excesso de capital, ou será que é uma coisa que realmente presta?
And if you look at the amount of capital involved in both of those projects and other investments, I would have to say that there are far, far more important ways to spend your money than that.
E agora, se a gente for ver os volumes de dinheiro que são gastos nesses megaprojetos, eu diria que há muitas maneiras de se gastar muito melhor o dinheiro do que nesses projetos.
The trouble is that social need is not necessarily backed by ability to pay.
Agora, a questão é que a necessidade social não é apoiada pela capacidade de repagar dinheiro.
What you see in many of the Chinese contracts in Latin America is that China asserts priority in access to the raw materials of those countries which it invests in.
O que a gente vê nos contratos que a China faz com esses países latino-americanos, por exemplo, é que ela tem em vista matérias-primas que estão nesses países.
If Ecuador cannot repay its debt to the Chinese, it surrenders the sovereignty over its oil fields to the Chinese.
Por exemplo, o Equador, se ele não honrar a sua dívida com os chineses, o Equador cede a soberania sobre os seus recursos petrolíferos.
This is a very shocking thing for me to learn.
Isso foi uma coisa terrível para mim quando eu descobri isso.
I think it has appalling consequences.
E tem consequências terríveis.
But again, what we see is a country like Ecuador needs the capital, but at the same time, it needs to guard its resources.
Um país como o Equador, por exemplo, né, ele precisa do capital, mas ao mesmo tempo precisa resguardar os seus recursos naturais.
The indigenous question is a very difficult one.
A questão indígena é uma questão muito difícil.
In part because different indigenous groups have completely different approaches to capitalist modernity.
Em parte porque diferentes grupos indígenas têm abordagens diferentes em relação aos padrões capitalistas.
I was struck very much in visiting El Alto in Bolivia.
Eu fiquei bastante chocado quando eu visitei a região de El Alto, em Bolívia, na Bolívia.
This is a city which was nothing in 1980 and now has more than 1 million people.
E era uma cidade que não tinha nada até 1980 e de repente tem mais de 1 milhão de habitantes.
It's 60 or 70% indigenous Amara population.
60 ou 70% de lá são indígenas ou população local.
They have built an astonishingly vibrant merchant capitalist kind of society.
E construíram uma sociedade extremamente vibrante, bem no estilo capitalista.
Within which certain traditional cultural structures are preserved.
Are preserved.
Are preserved.
Na qual algumas estruturas tradicionais são preservadas, sim.
But the Amara in El Alto are completely different from the indigenous groups in Amazonia.
Mas essas regiões, El Alto, por exemplo, na Bolívia, são completamente diferentes das populações que a gente encontra na região da Amazônia.
That really don't want anything to do with capitalist modernity.
Tem populações na Amazônia que não tem nada a ver com o capitalismo.
But as I've seen in Ecuador, find their water polluted.
Mas acabam descobrindo, como eu vi no Equador, que as atividades capitalistas estão poluindo, por exemplo, as suas águas.
The means of sustenance is effectively destroyed by oil extraction practices.
Muitas vezes o sustento é destruído pelas práticas de extração de óleo, de petróleo.
And they are effectively given no option except to be sort of almost resettled in contemporary style villages.
E eles não têm outra escolha, muitas vezes, a não ser relocados a vilas estilo contemporâneo,
And this is a very, very destructive practice.
destruindo as suas práticas ancestrais.
My own view is that if there are social groups that don't want anything to do with capitalist modernity, they should be allowed to live that way.
E a minha opinião é de que se há grupos que desejam viver fora das práticas capitalistas, devem sair fora do esquema e viver dessa maneira.
And means should be provided to try to protect those societies from the effects of
No sentido dos indígenas, e meios deveriam ser provistos para essas comunidades para que possam se proteger a si
or
próprios,
the effects of oil and mineral extraction.
ou dos efeitos da extração mineral e de petróleo.
But again, what we see, I'm familiar with situation in Ecuador. Chinese mining companies are given free rein in mineral extraction in the south of the country.
E eu vi o que acontece no Equador, sim. Agora, comparando com isso, a gente pode ver também que na China, as empresas exploradoras dos solos na China têm sido dados carta branca para poder explorar todo o sudeste do país.
They have destroyed indigenous communities in the process.
Destruíram comunidades tradicionais nesse processo.
Several indigenous leaders have been killed under suspicious circumstances.
Muitos líderes indígenas foram mortos sob circunstâncias suspeitas.
And again, this seems to me to be an intolerable part of what capitalist extractionism is about.
E isso é a base, inclusive, do nosso terrível base do extracionismo capitalista.
What was this? No.
Yeah. Sorry, what about labor slaves or escravismo?
Of occupation.
Oh, civil construction leads to very bad
Right.
work conditions.
Yes.
Practically slaves.
Yes. There's one of the things that I think we also have to recognize is that the global labor force now has increased remarkably over the last 30 years.
Houve grande aumento na força de trabalho nos últimos 30 anos.
That it's increased from around 2 to 3 billion wage workers since 1980.
Aumentou de 2 a 3 bilhões de trabalhadores pagos com salários.
So there's been a huge increase in disposable labor.
Então houve grande aumento também do trabalho descartável.
During a period in which technological change has actually diminished labor requirements in many areas of manufacturing.
Numa situação moderna na qual os avanços tecnológicos na área de produção levaram a postos de trabalho onde não há nenhuma especialização.
So we have huge disposable labor forces available around the world.
Então nós temos uma força de trabalho que é totalmente descartável. Está trabalhando, mas é descartável a qualquer momento, no mundo inteiro.
Many of these are now caught up in migration streams, which are often illegal.
Muitos desses caem em armadilhas de roteiros de trabalho, de imigração de trabalho no mundo inteiro.
In many instances, the illegality is purposeful, not accidental.
E são procedimentos situações ilegais nas quais vivem, e muitas vezes essa ilegalidade na qual vivem não é por acaso, e sim de propósito, a ilegalidade.
For example, California agribusiness survives on illegal immigrant labor.
Por exemplo, o agronegócio na Califórnia sobrevive graças ao trabalho ilegal.
Because illegal labor, you can pay them what you want or not bother to pay them.
O trabalho ilegal é muito mal pago ou nem sequer se incomoda em pagar.
And of course they have no social or political rights.
Claro que eles não têm direitos políticos, sociais, trabalhistas.
We see many of these sorts of things occurring in the Middle East.
Nós vemos muito disso acontecendo também no Oriente Médio,
where labor conditions are absolutely appalling.
onde as condições de trabalho são realmente terríveis.
And there's been a lot of agitation over the preparations for the World Cup in Qatar.
Tem tido muita agitação na preparação para a Copa Mundial, Copa do Mundo de Futebol, em Catar,
in which a large number of workers have died in construction industry.
onde muitos trabalhadores da construção morreram.
Migrant laborers coming out of India or out of Southeast Asia.
E trabalhadores da Ásia, Sudoeste Asiático, Sudeste Asiático e da Índia entram para o Catar para suprir a demanda do mercado de trabalho em construção.
Again, capital doesn't care about the conditions of life of this disposable surplus labor force.
O capital não liga para essa força de trabalho totalmente descartável.
The only way in which anything can be done about that is through political channels.
A única forma que se pode fazer alguma coisa a respeito é através de canais políticos.
But those political channels are very often already corrupted by money and corporate power.
Mas frequentemente esses canais políticos já estão corrompidos por dinheiro ou por fluxos de capital.
It's either that or are kind of under the guidance of non-governmental institutions, which frankly are often worse than the governments.
E também uma outra opção, que seriam as organizações não governamentais, caem na dificuldade também, porque muitas vezes as organizações não governamentais são piores do que as governamentais.
It's extremely difficult to organize under conditions of this sort.
É muito difícil de se organizar sob condições deste tipo.
But we have seen some immigrant rights movements and also precarious workers movements emerging in various parts of the world.
Mas nós temos visto movimentos de trabalhar, alguns movimentos, poucos movimentos de trabalhadores emergindo pelo mundo ou em situações geralmente bastante precárias.
And one of the things that's interesting here is some of the connectivities that are being established within these movements.
Mas é interessante ver a conectividade que tem se estabelecido entre esses grupos.
And one of the helpful things that can be done is to try to set up structures of communication between workers of this kind.
E uma das coisas úteis que pode ser feitas é estabelecer estruturas de comunicação entre trabalhadores deste tipo.
For instance, the McDonald's workers in the United States now have a communication system which allows them all simultaneously to stop work in about 20 or 30 cities at a particular time.
Por exemplo, os trabalhadores da rede McDonald's nos Estados Unidos têm um sistema de comunicação que lhes permite, por exemplo, parar imediatamente o trabalho em 20 ou 30 cidades nos Estados Unidos.
And so it's not impossible through internet and other mechanisms to actually see self-organizing structures emerging in workforces of this kind.
Então não é difícil que apareçam novas maneiras de comunicação através da internet ou outros meios, de maneira a poder ter alguma força nesse ambiente.
And I know a computer company that helps set up a phone app for all McDonald's workers so they can simultaneously see what each other is doing.
Eu sei de um aplicativo que foi desenvolvido por uma empresa de computação, de maneira que há um aplicativo para que os trabalhadores da McDonald's possam saber exatamente o que está acontecendo com todos eles.
And there are creative things like this that I think people like us can help construct.
São coisas criativas como estas que pessoas como nós podemos ajudar a construir.
To the degree that precarious work is becoming more and more significant in many societies.
De maneira que o trabalho precário está aparecendo cada vez mais na sociedade em geral.
So it seems that finding adequate communication and information structures for those precarious labor forces becomes a pressing need.
Então parece ser que encontrar maneiras de aumentar a comunicação entre esses trabalhadores precários ganha maior e maior importância.
That answers one of the English questions, was what's the first step?
Eu tenho aqui algumas perguntas em inglês. Qual é o primeiro passo?
And I think the first step is whichever one you want to take.
O primeiro passo, acho que é aquele passo que você quiser dar.
But just take it.
Só dá aquele passo.
And let's go in the same direction, which is anti-capitalist.
E o melhor é manter a mesma direção, que é o anticapitalismo.
And make sure you don't drift off to the right.
E garantir que vocês tenham força para continuar.
So there you go.
É por aí.
Professor Harvey, em nome da Unicamp, do Instituto de Economia, de todos os alunos, professores, servidores aqui presentes e que puderam assistir à transmissão, queremos agradecer profundamente a palestra e esses momentos realmente deliciosos que passamos aqui nessa manhã. Segundo, gostaríamos também de pedir desculpa aí pelo problema da logística na tradução, agradecer desde já aos nossos tradutores aqui que se esforçaram, mas pela participação do público e pela dinâmica da palestra, esse problema parece ter sido menor. Finalmente, avisar a todos que o vídeo vai estar integralmente disponível no site da Unicamp, do Instituto de Economia, para que as pessoas possam depois usufruir da excelente palestra. Muito obrigado, boa tarde a todos.